Release the Kraken!
Greetings, fellow game designers. Ron here at Lame Duck Studios, and today I want to go ahead and tackle our start menu and our display screens. So for that, we're going to hop right into Photoshop because that's where a lot of the magic is going to happen. So I'm going to jump into Photoshop here, and we're going to create a new file with a size relative to our screen size. The typical screen size nowadays is about 1920 pixels by 1080. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose my preset here. If you don't have a preset, make sure you're in pixels, and then go ahead and set up your size here. Resolution 72. Background, I'm going to go ahead and just do a transparent, and then I'll hit create. Awesome. And I'm going to choose to have something in my background. You can design this however you like. I'm just going to make this fancy. Right off the bat, I'm going to do a background. So I'm going to go ahead and just change this to background. And I want to do, since I'm doing Space Invaders, I'm going to make it kind of like spacey, where it's kind of dark and space-like, but then have something to do with like a planet. So I think I'm going to come up to here, and I'll pick some colors. I actually have this blue color here. If I click on that, this is the settings for that blue. So if you want this particular blue, this is the R, G, and B. And I like that as being one of my colors. For my next color, go ahead and grab that. I'll do kind of like my previous blue, but a little bit darker. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this value. You can copy the hashtag value here, or you can copy your RGB, so 24, 117, 176. And then you can just paste that in here. Again, that's 24, 117, 176 if you really want to follow this color. I'm going to jump down to a darker version of it, like that, and then hit OK. So now I have my two. And then over here, I've got an arrow. I can swap the colors. You can also swap the colors by pressing the X key. That is your hotkey. I'm going to go over to my paint bucket. If you don't see the paint bucket tool, you might also see the gradient tool, which is sometimes here. It's like this guy. Okay, I actually want the gradient, so I'm going to grab that. And now I can drag a gradient in here by clicking and dragging. And suddenly I have a gradient. Eee. Now, one of the new updates in Photoshop 2024 lets you see the gradient and preview it before you drop it, which is really nice. If you're in an older version, you might not have this turned on. I'm going to go ahead and just drag this out. If you hold down Shift, you can get a straight drag, or you can drag in a direction to kind of get one of these. But I like that. That's kind of cool. Again, to have that setting, I've got my gradient set up. I have this guy chosen. And then my method is set to classic. You can do linear if you want to change it, or perpetual if you want to do that. But this is the current setting on this. You can also reverse the gradient, which is a really handy feature so that I don't have to, let's say I drew it this way and I was like, oh, you know what? I really want to see what it looks like going the other way. Instead of having to draw it out the other way, I can just click the reverse button, and that's going to flip the gradient, so I get to preview it that way. And I actually like this layout, but I want it to be darker toward the top and somewhat lighter down near the bottom. So I'm going to go like this. That's kind of cool. And then down here, I'm going to create some curvature. So I'm going to add a new layer. And I want there to be kind of like my planet here. So let's go and find my Shapes tool, grab an ellipse, and I'll drag out my planet. Yeah, I think that's good. Can't really see what I'm doing. I'll turn my background off. I'm just poking the eyeball there. And then I'm going to put some shapes on here to make it look planet-like. So I'll make a new layer, and I'll grab my pen tool. So click and hold and drag your pen tool out. It's this guy. And I'll just make some continent-looking things. This doesn't have to be Earth. It could be whatever kind of planet you want it to be. And for those, I'll fill them in with a green. Maybe I'll make another like continent kind of thing out here. Maybe it looks like it's wrapping around the globe. Follow this curvature a little bit. And I can really adjust this curve here. If I go and grab my convert tool, it's on my pen. I come down and grab convert. And then I can grab this little dot in the middle, and now I can change how that's being drawn. There we go. And these don't have to stay jagged. I can totally take my convert tool and adjust these so it looks a little bit more organic. And grab the other shape here, do kind of the same thing. Round off some of the parts. Some areas I think are good being jagged. Some might be better having a little bit of curve. And I need one more just to kind of fill it in. Our brains really like things in threes, so I'm going to add a third thing here. Maybe I'll do like a couple small islands. And then, yeah, so maybe like something like this. I can hold Alt and drag and make another. I don't like that one. I just want something over here. Change its direction by hitting Control T, and now I can rotate and then hit Enter. And I can use my Convert tool again and round off some of these areas. I can also use my Selection tool. So Direct Selection tool, I can grab the points on this and I can just move them to adjust the shape overall. So there's my planet. I want a little bit of a glow on the outer edge here. To do that, I'm going to take the background planet, so I'll grab my selection tool, make sure auto select is on, I'll click the background, hold down the Alt key, click and drag up a little bit, and then for this one I'm going to change the color. If I click the little icon here in the layers, I can pick up the color palette and I'll go to a slightly brighter color. Drop down the opacity a little. Let's turn the background on so I can kind of see. Let me grab my gradient. Now I like this, but I really want this effect to kind of curve around my planet. And I want to be able to see the shape of the planet underneath. So let me dial down my opacity a little bit. Okay. And now that I'm looking at this, you can see that this is just way too bright up here. So I'm going to grab my background, I'll get my gradient tool, and let me go ahead and pull this a little bit farther down. I'll take this gradient handle, pull that down, and I can adjust this little center line here for how much I want to fall off, so I'll adjust the fall off there. Yeah, got my planet, got that. And then the text. This is up to you where you want to put the text. You can put the text here inside the picture, or you can do it inside of Unity. If you do it here, the text is part of the picture, and if we stretch the picture, the text gets stretched with it. If we do it inside of Unity, then the text is part of Unity. So I'll let you be the judge of where you want to put it, but I'll show you both and why you might want to do one over the other. So let's say, for example, I want to have a text layer, so I'll hit my text option. And I'll drag my text out up here. And I'll just call this Space Invaders 3D. Now in Photoshop, I have a lot of stuff that I can do with my text. I can take my text here. Right now it's blue. Don't worry about the color. If you want to change the color, select your type, and then highlight your type. And then up here on your typing tools, you can change the color by clicking the color palette and then picking a different color. Now the reason why I said don't worry about the color here is I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. Instead, I'm going to take my text layer, double click it, and now I'll open up my layer styles. And what that lets me do is I can add on all kinds of things, like maybe a drop shadow. I can push the shadow behind it, and you can see that, and adjust that shadow. I can do a new color, so I can go color overlay, and I can just pick the color that I want and just change it right here. So you don't have to worry about the initial color. You can always change it. Let's say I want to have something that pops and is like metallic. So let's do, maybe I'll do a gold. So pick like a yellowish with a little bit of orange in there, so I can, or a little bit of red in there, so it gets this color. And let's say I want to do a bit of an outline on that. So I add a stroke. And then for the stroke, maybe I might do something similar. I'll give it a little bit of gold, maybe slightly brighter. Okay. I'll come out just a little bit brighter on that to really sell it. And then I'm going to go down to gradient. I'll add a gradient in here. Let's choose a black and white. So I'll do a basic black and white. Now these are being blended almost completely. So you can see the normal and my opacity are. So normal just means it's going to be itself. And then opacity is how translucent it's going to be. If I dial this down just a little bit and take a look at my gradient, we can take a better peek at how this gradient is going to be applied. I can change the angle of the gradient like so. I can make it go back to there. Right now it's linear. We can change it to radial. We can change it to angle. I can specify an angle on here. I can change it to reflected. Or I can do diamond. And you can see how all those kind of affect this. I like linear. And let's see if I take it from reverse to that. You can see the preview here. This is how it's being blended. Kind of like the idea of it being blended from top to bottom. So I'm going to take this. I'll do reverse here. Let me change this to 90. Let's bring up my opacity. I'll make it more solid. What does radial look like? So radial gives us dark on the edges here. It's brighter in the middle and then dark over here. It looks like this setup, I have it dark on the top and brighter on the bottom. You can see dark up top, a little brighter on the bottom. And the size, you can really kind of see how that's going to be blended here. And see what my angle plays out to be. If I do 0, I've got that. And you can see it's bright here, and then it tapers down to darker. If I change the angle to, let's say, 45, it kind of angles this way. I kind of like 90. Let's change this out to reflected. What reflected is going to do is going to give me a middle band and then dark, dark. You can see it's brighter in the middle. If I adjust here, we got brighter in the middle but darker on the ends here. We can also uncheck the reverse option, and it's darker in the middle and brighter on the ends. So you can really play around with how these colors are being blended. Oh, I don't need the drop shadow. I'll take that off. Drop shadow. Let me dial the distance on that down. It's weird to have a shadow in space, but whatever. So these are kind of like the things that you can do in Photoshop. You can mess with your text and your type. I'm going to go ahead and just save this. So I'll do save my copy. Now this is going to be my Space Invaders title. I'll do title and then screen. Make sure I save my Photoshop file. And I'll also save out my PNG. So File, Save Copy. And then PNG. Space Invaders title screen, PNG. All right, let's go jump into Unity here. I'll grab my textures, and let's find our file. All right, I'm going to drag my file in. And let's make sure we're in the correct scene. I'll go to my Scenes folder, jump into my main menu. Let's add on a UI element image. And I'll select the image and just press F out here so I can frame up on it. So here's my image. To add my image to my background that's there, I'll go to my textures. And you can see I can't drag this into my canvas. It says no. If I select the image and I go down to source image, it won't let me drag it there either. And the reason is I have to convert my texture to a 2D image. So I'm going to go up and grab my texture, take the texture type, come down to Sprite 2D and UI, hit apply. And now I can drag this in, or I can apply it directly to the background image. So I'm going to grab my little background image, and I'll drag this into the source image option. And now I want it to fit my screen. So I'm going to go up to the center. This is my anchors, so I'll grab that. Hit anchor all, which is down here. And then I'll set each position to 0. So 0, 0, 0, and 0. And as you can see, this fills out. But as I'm changing like the width and the height of this, see how the text, because the text is part of the picture, it gets stretched with it. So that's one of the downsides about having the text built into the picture, is as the picture distorts, so will the text. But you have more flexibility to manipulate the text inside of Photoshop. If, however, you want the text to be separate, you can add yourself. If I go ahead and right-click on my canvas, and I come down to UI, and then add a Text Mesh Pro text, you go ahead and add my essentials here. Now I can add my title text, so I can say Space Invaders 3D. Let me adjust the width here. Word of caution, do not adjust the scale. I can take the scale tool and I can totally scale this, okay? But scaling it stretches the text. Don't do that. If you want to adjust your text box, I recommend using your width and height. You also have these little sliders here. This does work, but look, as I move this, there's no update. There's no input of where this got changed, and that is not useful. What I recommend is going up to your width and dialing it in here. So let's say I want this to be 300. And a little bit more. So let's do 350. By doing that, I know exactly how big this is, and I can have more control, and I can talk to this in code. If I drag these little sliders, I don't know where that information is, and it's kind of bothersome. Yeah, I can dig around in here and kind of find it, but I don't want to do that. I want to be able to have everything nice and ready for me. So I really recommend using your width and height if you need to adjust the width and height. To center the text, I'll make sure my position X is center, and that my anchor is set to center. And I also want to come down and my text settings, go to alignment, and I can choose the center option. And then there's also a center, so that'll push it center of the frame that's here. And now we do have some customization options to make it prettier, but they're not quite as advanced as the ones in Photoshop. But the advantage is if I use this instead. Let's say I go to the text. I'll change the color. It's like this gold color. We can also add a color gradient, and you can pick, do like a gold and like a darker kind of gold. I can add those on and get these little effects here. Now the advantage of using the text versus the Photoshop text is if I take the image and I want to adjust the image, you can see I can mess with the image all day, but the text inside of Unity will be consistent. So pick your battle, whichever one you want to use, that's up to you. It all depends on your workflow and the goal that you have, okay? All right, enough on that. Let's go ahead and move on. I'll set this back to the default. And I do like my styled text that I have, so I'm going to remove my text from the screen here. And that'll do it for this video. It's me from the future to let you know that in the next video, we'll be adding on these buttons. So stay tuned, and I shall see you next time. Hey guys, thank you for checking out my channel. Misty and I both thank you. If you enjoyed that video you just watched, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Or if you want to support the channel, check me out on Patreon or pick up one of my books, Life and Times Down in Marton or The Guardian's Path of Ascension. Speaking of which, I'm converting The Guardians into a graphic novel / comic book series. Here is a sneak peek. My wonderful artist, Patrick, is doing a great job. I'm excited. I want to push this out as soon as possible. So definitely keep your ears and eyes open for that. I'll be making announcements as we get closer, and I'll post some shots of that as we go. And if you want to follow me on social media, you can check me out on Twitter. I guess now it's X. Who does that? It's BruceRF1 at Twitter, or at whatever the new thing for Twitter is. Anyway, hopefully see you there, and I'll see you guys next time.